Welcome to the Theory of DFS podcast. I'm Jordan Cooper, the co-author of The Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass you could pick up at theoryofdfs.com, as well as the advanced course, which just came out. That includes 10 new chapters, as well as Microsoft Excel tools built from the ground up from James McCool to help you be more accurate and more efficient with your process. And join with me, as always, during the NFL season, discussing Week 6. Neil Orfield from Stochastic on so many shows. On the Contrary, and the Tournament Strategy Show, and the Ownership Show, and everything. And now that basketball's back, you may even be on more NFL shows.
Yeah, it looks like I'm just doing more NFL. I was unsure if they were going to throw me into some NBA shows, but for the time being, at least, it looks like I'm just doing NFL every day.
Is that what you want?
Honestly, yeah. I think at some point I wouldn't mind doing some NBA content, but NBA, I've said it before, it's the one sport that I'm really reliant on other people's touting. And I know you said before I could just wait for projections to update, and but I do think there are little nuggets here and there. I think we have really great NBA analysts at Stochastic, so I don't mind just listening to them for NBA and sticking to NFL myself.
Right, I do the same at Roto Grinders. Like, I think our projections team is very good. Let them make the adjustments throughout the day and minutes and usage and everything, and I'll get the numbers at the end, and I'll build my lineups. And especially in a much lower variance sport with less event driven, it's gonna be geared a lot by the projections. And
Yeah.
in NFL, I highlighted this on the Blitz show. I filled in for Will this past week with Cardi, and I discussed it this morning as well. Uh, this past week in NFL it felt like a little bit more of an old school like type of NFL DFS week with we got tons of value, running backs are out and
Yep.
everything like that. And I saw the sentiment so much in some discords of this is an easy week for cash. And I said on Friday on Thursday's show and on the Blitz show, I said no, this is a tough week for cash. This is an easy
Because
week for
everybody's going to be
GPPs.
playing the same lineups.
Well, it's not, but it's not the same lineup. See, the problem is when you have, let's say, if we had like three obvious values, like the lineup construction leads you in a way where, well, this 7K guy is obviously 2 points better projected than this guy, and this defense is obviously better projected than that. It leads you to much more similar lineups that all project. Like there's not much there's not much variation to it.
Okay. So there are a lot of lineups that projected pretty similarly at the top.
Right, and then there's a big gap. So like when you have too much value, what ends up happening is that there are like 4 or 5 lineups that project very close to each other, and then there's a gap rather than like 2 lineups that project close to each other. So it's a matter of, well, I know that a lot of people are going to play lineup A, B, C, and D, and they all project within a half a point of each other. Which one is the better lineup? Who knows which one is the better lineup, but I know that the variance of each lineup is still the same, so it's matters of, does my 100 lineup train beat their 100 lineup train, beat the other 100 lineup train? And if you were to tell me which lineup is better than the other, there's no definitive. We're talking about 51-49s at best. But let's take a slate like NBA. I think it happens much more often in NBA. We got a whole ton of people out, and basically like 5 spots in your lineup are like pre-plugged in. And then once based on the position of those players and everything, like you press that optimal button, right, on your optimizer, or you build the top 20 projected lineups. Lineup 1 is going to be like 2 points better projected than number 2. And number 2 is going to be a point projected than number 3. Like, if you don't play those like 5 or 6 players, like you drop off immediately, which means if you don't do that, you're making a much bigger mistake. And in cash games, it's about competing against people that make big mistakes. So like, it's much tougher to make a big mistake when there are several 3v3s and 4v4s that don't drop off like that. They're like, nope, that's good also, and that's good also, and that's good also. So, like in cash games on DraftKings, I lost money this week, but it was essentially on a 3v3.
Did you play the DK Metcalf? I saw you made a joke about playing DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and locking in.
That was the blitz optimal as well as the blended kind of industry wide.
I mean, it made sense. Made a lot of sense to me.
Right, but this number 2 was instead of playing Metcalf, Henderson, and the Panthers defense, you play Godwin, Walker, and the Saints defense, and that was within a half a point. And I was like, I prefer Walker to Henderson.
Yep.
But do I want DK Metcalf or Godwin? This is so close. I just went with like whatever the Seahawks do. I'm just going to get all the points, right? Yeah, and I did, and I got all 9.5 of them because of that. So, like there were like 100 in the big $25 double up. There were like 110 people with my lineup, and like 128 people with that other lineup. And then there were
how many entries total in that contest?
Oh, like 5,000 something. I mean, whatever.
Okay.
And then there was 600 and something entries with a Diggs lineup that looked similar to that with Kamara instead of Walker or whatever. Like I knew that lineup also. So it's like that lineup projects fine also. I mean, like you're looking at lineups and you go, close your eyes and pick one. Like that's not an easy week in cash. Easy week doesn't mean I feel comfortable about my lineup. Right? Because it's like, it's any way I go, I feel like, okay, I'm not like, if I don't have Andrews in the lineup, okay, I don't mind, but then I have Diggs in my lineup. If I don't.
Unless there are some really bad players in the field. You don't have a lot of players in the field who are just like not playing anything close to the optimal. I've always assumed that in cash, you still run into a number of players who don't use projections.
But the thing is, Neil, is that when there are more obvious options, more of the field plays them. So like
just like by accident, even without using projections, they play them by accident. You think?
Yeah, because they're the most touted. I mean, like who's not playing Benjamin and Ramondre Stevenson in cash? Who's not playing Tyler Lockett in cash? Who's not playing Josh Allen? You take a look at this ownership, and these guys are 85+% owned. It's like because those are the easy ones, and the more that there are, now all the other options are very similar to one another. I prefer the slates where in cash there's like one or two like. You probably should play them in cash, and then you probably should pay down a tight end instead of paying up here because you sacrifice points there. Like those are where people make mistakes. But when you get like these layups, like not enough of the field make the mistake of not playing the layups. They'll play all the layups, and then their 3v3 or 4v4 is not that far off from you, no matter what they choose, as long as they use all their salary.
Right.
Like. That's not an easy week in cash. It's not about how you feel. It's not about the feels. It's about what your lineup is in comparison to other lineups that are combinatorially different from yours. I'm using the combo tropics or whatever the made up words. So a better slate. So like. For instance, especially since we're coming up to NBA, and you'll be doing this more in NBA than you would for NFL. The strength of how good of a GPP slate it is how many lineups in total exist that give up a small X amount percentage of points. So, like on an NBA slate where there is several value plays. And then the rest of the pricing is fairly efficient. Like it's much more optimal to play the value plays, and it's like, well, I got 4 spots left in my lineup. It's like, yeah, but any 4 is going to project about this. Like you're going to be 5 points below the optimal with like 5,000 different lineups, as opposed to a slate where there's so much more value that how many lineups leave only 5 points. Projection, there may only be a couple 100, right? Because now if you're getting off, now if you take out another of the value plays, now your projection goes down. Now you're 12 points behind the optimal. You take out another one, now you're at 19 points. Now you're giving up way too much projection. So it's like it's the slates of build, like in lineup HQ, build 300 optimal lineups, right? Just start default, whatever, fantasy cruncher, whatever the hell optimizer you use. Have no restrictions, no nothing, no correlation, no who gives a shit. No ownership cap, no nothing. And just give me the top 300. Give me the top 500. Give me the top 1,500, whatever it is. Like, there are slates that have limited value. You're gonna run basically a lineup. Number one, like if everything was efficient, for instance, lineup 1 to lineup 300 would barely have a difference, right? If the pricing was perfect, right? So like now the pricing is somewhat off, but if there's no slam dunk value plays, next thing you know, it's like now the ownership is efficient also. Like you're not, you go down 2 points in projection, you get a little bit less ownership and X, Y, and Z. If there's one big value play, let's say there's one like free square, quote unquote, like you're probably jamming that into 100% of your lineups in basketball, especially because like if you don't, you're dropping 10 points in projection immediately.
Right.
Which means you have to hope that all your players do well. You're probably sharing a bunch of players with a team that has that value play, and you're giving up 10 points of projection to do so. Like, it's much better to just, well, I'm just going to jam that guy in because if I take that guy out, the next best lineup is 10 points lower projected. Right? How many lineups are there in between 0 and 10 that are only 7 points lower projected? Well, those have that value play in, and there may be thousands of them. There may be, I mean, depends on the size of the slate, but on a large slate, there may be thousands of them. And those thousands of them are still have enough leverage for you to even win a large field GPP. So, like, why would you give up 10 points projection to not play the value play, the heavy value?
It does depend on the ownership to some extent. If he's getting 99% ownership, maybe you're hoping for, things get, maybe it's a little more fragile projection than we.
Yeah, but even if that's the case, Neil, the other 7 players in your lineup are probably very similar to ones, like, you're
assuming
doing
that
a
you're
1v1.
To some other, if you're doing a 1v1, but that's assuming that you're playing another player who has a similar salary to that player.
True. But even if you're not, you may still be sharing 4 or 5 players with a lineup that has that player in it also.
Sure.
Your goal is to share as few players as possible. If I'm going to share as few players as possible, wouldn't it be better to share the player that has a 12x median? I'll share that player with the field.
Yeah.
And then I'll be a 4v4, 5v5 off of the rest when the value is so clear. So I relate it to this cash versus GPP, like easy versus hard. It's like when there's too much value, it's harder for your opponents to make mistakes because there's just more value to choose from. So it's like maybe you don't hit them all, but you're more, even if you throw darts, you're more likely to hit value than anything. Like, it's very rare in cash games. I'm not going to find a lineup that doesn't have like any of Eno, Ramondre, Lockett. I'm not going to, or Allen. Like, I'm not going to, like, people are going to have 2 of them, 3 of, I mean, like Rondell Moore. People are going to have some combination because they're so obvious. That, like, how much different are your lineups going to be from even the weakest players? Not as much as you think. Yet on slates where the value is less obvious, where there's value, but not as slam dunk, it's much more likely that people just miss. They're more like, they don't get that the $6,700 player that should be $7,800. Like, you should be playing that guy in cash, and they choose just some other player instead. And they do that 2 or 3 times, and now their lineup is 5 points lower projected. It's hard to get a lineup that's 5 points lower projected in cash on slates where half your lineup is almost preloaded.
You know what I'm just remembering? I actually looked at on Saturday. I looked to see if you had posted any head-to-heads on DraftKings in like the $5 range, and I was going to try and scoop one of your head-to-heads to see if I could land on your lineup. I just want to see if I could figure out what your cash game lineup was going to be. And I never did the exercise to figure out what it was going to be, but I was thinking there are so many obvious plays on here. I wonder if this is an obvious cash spot. But yeah, I mean, your logic obviously follows for me that if all the projections are too close, there's no real advantage that you're going to have on other players. Yeah, that makes sense to me. It would have been fun to try to see if I could match your cash game lineup. But
well, you could just look at it later. I don't know why you have to take any games or anything. You could just look through lineup rewind or results DB or something. I mean, like, you don't, like, people do that. It's like, oh, I just took a head-to-head so I could see your lineup. It's like, it's the same lineup I play in the double ups. I mean, you're not going to, like, you don't have to take my head-to-heads. I mean, just.
Well, then it would have been more work for me to, like, write down all of the players I was going to play in that lineup, because I'm not going to play whatever the cash lineup is going to be. I'm not going to play that in a GPP. So I didn't bother.
Right. And in GPP this slate, I wouldn't have changed anything really. I mean, from an ownership perspective, I don't see any misses. I think I had the Buccaneers wide receivers a little lower owned.
Hmm.
Uh, but everything else was kind of, I'm just scrolling through. I had Justin Jefferson lower owned. I mean, he came in at 15. Uh, but I had the general gist. I had right. I thought that with the cheap running backs available, that the high end wide receivers would be over owned, or we get most of the ownership, and the players that have ceilings that won't be as owned are those over 6K running backs, like the Barkleys, the Mixons, the Camaras, the Leonard Fournettes. So I was looking to play more of them, and not
Yep.
play more than one of Eno, Ramondre, and Henderson or Walker. Like just max one of those four, and then make sure to basically play. I played a bunch of Deion Jackson instead because he was at least lower owned than that. And then the other thing was to not play Lockett or Ronald Moore in anything other than game stacks. Because as a one, like if they get there, that means the game probably gets there. And I did the same with Stephon Diggs. So like Stephon Diggs is a one-off. I removed. And the Seattle Arizona game and the Buffalo Chiefs, the Buffalo Kansas City game, I played only as 3+2 stacks. Not even three
Hmm.
plus one, but like three from one side, two from the other side. Arizona, Seattle, like it would be something like Geno, Lockett, Metcalf, uh, Eno Moore, Eno Ertz. Then it would be something like Allen Diggs, Knox, uh, Allen Diggs, McKenzie, Kelsey, Juju. Like something like that. That if the
Yep.
game goes off, I got it, and if it doesn't go off, most of my other lineups don't have like the main pieces of that game at all. And from a barbell approach, it did work out, right? Because my Arizona Seattle lineups way at the bottom.
Yep.
But I'm
Everywhere.
not stuck there with Tyler Lockett's 3 points in an otherwise good lineup
Yeah.
that had the Bengals, the Joe Burrow games, or Matt Ryan lineups that I had a couple of. But it looks here from your exposure that it seemed like your biggest leverage point on the slate was to basically go overboard on like Kittle and Pitts, like the tight ends in the mid range that people weren't going to play as much. Because Pitts
Yeah.
was 2.4% owned in the Millie, Kittle was 7% owned, and you had one or both of them in like almost half your lineups.
Yeah. Yep. I was a big stand I took was I thought those guys had a real opportunity to score a lot of fantasy points at really low ownership, and it didn't really work out. They were both fine. Neither of them, really did what I needed them to do to break a slate.
Yeah, I did the opposite. I just went way overboard on Mark Andrews.
Yep. That worked out better.
Right. I just went way, I just looked and it said the chances, tight end is a position that if you could get that guy that has 30, 40 points, like no one can catch up. Everyone has to play some bullshit tight end with 9 points or something. I'm
Yep.
gonna win that way. That's why I played a ton of Lamar. A lot of Lamar, Barkley, Andrews types lineups. Some
Yeah.
Slayton thrown there. Obviously, Duvernay didn't do all that well. I had him thrown in there. Uh, but yeah, I just thought at the tight end position, I thought at the tight end and the running back position, there was an outsized likelihood that you're gonna have a player that you need to have, and people were
Yeah.
playing other things. So like I could have done that at running back, or I could have done it at tight end, but I wasn't gonna do it at both. So like
Right.
if going with your way of like I'm just gonna play a lot of Pitts, a lot of Kittle, a lot of these tight ends that people weren't playing that have ceilings, and then kind of like eat the chalk running backs. I was like, no, I'm gonna eat the highest ceiling tight end, and
Yep.
then I'm gonna hope I get a Lenny Fournette 36 game or a Barkley 30 plus, like a game where raw point wise they would beat out a 7 to 8K wide receiver. So it's like I want a game where Fournette has the same points that Diggs has. I want
Yep.
Fournette to have the same points that Kamara to have the same points as Chase or something like that, and then find the 5K guys that like the Christian Kirk that okay he has 28, right? Brandon Ayuk,
Usually.
he had a bunch, right?
Yeah.
Like someone in that range and build for that construction because it was a less used construction. So like looking back at my lineups, like I'm fine. I mean, I didn't do poorly in GPP. I mean, I was under in the Buffalo Kansas City game. I
Yeah.
was over on the Seattle Arizona game, but the key is that those lineups just died. Like it's just like I was perfectly fine with those. If those two games went off, I got more than the field in a lineup because a lot of people are playing like 2+1s or 1-to-1s or three
Yeah.
plus one. It's like, nope, I'm playing five guys from the game, or I'm not, or you're not seeing much out of me.
You're going big on the game stacks. Yeah, that's
Right.
so
But
I
for that, but then I would play more of like Brady stacks, Lamar stacks, Matt
yeah.
Ryan stacks, Burrow stack, like just stack one of the 1 p.m. games. And then, well, I got super stacks in the late games, and the only person that I couldn't get out of that condition was Eno Benjamin. Just that Eno at 4,600 was like
Yeah.
I can't
It made all
just
the
have
sense.
him in game stack. It's just he projects too well for his price.
Yeah.
That even Eno Benjamin getting 19 points, like
Somebody asked
I
me if I
need
thought it was okay to lock him into lineups this week. Actually, I was asked, do you think it's okay to lock in Eno Benjamin and Ramondre Stevenson into every lineup? And I said, it's not what I'm doing, but I think that this is a fine week to do that. Like they both project well enough, in my opinion, that this is a slate that I wouldn't mind locking those guys
yeah,
in.
we
I
just
think
have
that
to
they made
build
sense.
around them. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like I couldn't have built Eno Ramondre lineups. It's just I chose not to. I chose to
Yeah.
say I'm not playing for that condition. Like
Yeah.
I'd much rather get a wide variety of lineups that I could still play some of the chalk in the rest of my lineup and be different in construction.
Yeah.
When you're jamming in, I mean, we're talking about in the Millie, Eno was 46% owned and Ramondre was 39% owned. When
Yeah.
you're eating 85 percentage points in ownership. And I'm typically looking somewhere in the Millie to be within like 80 to 120
Yeah.
combined.
You
It's
got to go a
like,
little bit different everywhere else.
right, dude, you need seven more things in your lineup that only add up to like 35 percentage points of ownership. Good luck keeping your projection up doing that.
Yeah.
I didn't see how I did that, so I just didn't. And
Yeah.
I look at what here's another thing that I mentioned on today's pregame show, and I've highlighted from JM to win plenty of times. To me it's the thing that I learned the most from him when he used to do the NFL Edge for Roto Grinders.
Hmm.
The had to have it. Had to have it. Had to have it. You know, how do you fade Ramondre Stevenson at 6,000?
Yeah. If he gets 20 points, you might not have to have it.
Right. It might still be in the winning lineup. Like, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that,
Doesn't
like,
a lot of people have it,
he
yeah.
failed, but
Right.
it is it a score that you had to have. The winning Millie. Stevenson, if I told you Ramondre Stevenson put up 25 points, which is exactly what he did, in your 150 lineups, how much of you would you have played? If I would have told you at 6,000, he scored 25 points.
I think I would have locked him.
Okay. But a
I
good
mean, I think
shot.
that it's good enough that it's a good enough baseline that I would want to have it in there. I know it's not a have to have it score, but 25 points at 6,000, I think is good enough that I would probably lock it and just worry about working around it from there.
Right. But Ramondre was, even at 25 points, wasn't even in the Millie winning lineup.
Yeah, I know.
Right? You didn't have to have it. Now, you could have had it, but
Yeah.
you didn't have to have it. So, like, there's a difference between the two. So people get scared on, like, well, what happens if 30% on whatever, he's the best value, whatever the hell goes off? And I'm like, well, like, you really have to define what going off is. If Tyler Lockett had 22 to 24 points, you'd be like think of a game, 7 for 100 with a touchdown. That sounds like a Tyler Lockett game. Like, you'd be satisfied. Yeah. That's 26 points because you get the bonus.
Yeah.
For 5,600. Most likely, I know you do those polls on Twitter. Like, most likely, I'd say he has a good shot, especially at his ownership, to being in the winning Millie winning lineup. But even at 26 points, is it a hat? Is it a no Lockett, no cash? It's
No.
still not. It's even with that line, it's still not, because it's not what he scores; it's what other people score. So imagine if Lockett put up 26 points. It's like, dude, I'm looking through. I'm going to name some people that would you be shocked if they had 26 points? Also, Amari Cooper.
No.
No. Deontay Johnson.
No.
Brandon Ayuk. Drake London. Juju, which he did.
Right. We saw it from
Right.
Ayuk and Juju were at least right there.
Right. I'm looking through Christian Kirk.
Right. Yeah.
I'm
These are all
naming
guys that can put up 20. So I mean, the question was if you knew that he was going to get 26 points. That's like an 80th, 85th percentile
right.
outcome
You'll take
any
if
of
you
these guys.
knew.
So
right.
I would lock it in. But yes,
right.
but if without knowing that, then yes, the point is
right.
Well,
Jalen Waddle. If I told you if I told you that Jalen Waddle would be 6% owned and Tyler Lockett would be 30% owned, do you think Lockett has a 5 times more likelihood of putting up 26 points?
Right. Yeah. No.
No. So like what's a had to have it score from Lockett? 8 for 135 and 2 touchdowns. Right. Yeah. There you go. Right. That's what you should be scared of. When people talk about being scared, they're not being scared of like median outcomes of 70th percentile outcomes. It's like, dude, it's an 11-game slate. If it was a 3-game slate, 26 points, that's going to be much more closer to a had to have it. But like when Diggs, if I knew they played at different times, but like you couldn't tell me that before the slate. Like you look in, if I told you Diggs had 33 points, like is there? And obviously, if the games were on at different times, like are you dead? Well, while still having Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, like you don't know their scores yet. It's like, is there an instance where like that, like, oh, if you don't have Diggs, you're dead? Like, no, you have plenty of guys that can outscore him also. And then also you can't even fit all of them in your lineup. So it's hard to have both of them in it. So like these thresholds of what, when you play GPPs and go, what's good chalk and bad chalk? I hate that type of thinking. There's no such thing as good chalk and bad chalk. There's just good lineups and bad lineups. They could contain one chalk piece, but not another. They all have ranges of outcomes. So you can't say that Ramondre Stevenson was good chalk and Kenneth Walker's bad chalk. Like that. No, it's a projected range of outcomes. How do you build your lineups accordingly? But if you're sitting there going, yeah, Ramondre could crush. And I'm like, well, picture in your head what is a score in which that you will have no hope in the world. Right? If you're playing one, let's say even one
35.
lineup. 35?
Yeah, something like that for Ramondre at 6,000. I don't think you're winning. If he's putting up 35 at the ownership that he was getting, 40% ownership, I don't think you have much of a shot. You might have a little bit of a shot, but it's pretty slim at that point.
Now name the actual stats of a line that scores 35 fantasy points.
Let's see, 100 rushing yards, 100 receiving yards. He's now we're up to 26, plus however many receptions. We'll give him a touchdown in there. Now he's up to 32 and three receptions for those 100 yards. There's 35.
Right, so a double bonus game with 2 touchdowns.
But, I mean, you can also just that's one touchdown there, by the way.
Right, okay, double bonus game with 1. Well, let's say he doesn't get the double bonus. Let's say he has 140 yards rushing. Right, that's 17 points.
Yep.
2 touchdowns. Right, so now we're talking about 29. And let's say you throw in 6 for 30. Right, now you're at 38.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a Ramondre ceiling. That's not a median performance. That's a ceiling performance. So it's like, okay, you're fading that, right? You're not fading what he did. You're not fading. I mean,
25, 26,
25 points, right? You're not like you would like to have it. It's going to be 25 points for Stevenson at 40% owned. Yeah, that's detrimental to your lineups if you don't have him in your life. True, yeah. But is it had to have it?
No.
So So even if you're playing like 3 lineups or 1 lineup or 10, whatever amount of lineups, you go, yeah, I gotta play the good chalk. I'm not saying he was bad chalk. I think Stevenson was fine. I was a little under on Stevenson, but he fit in lineups that he needed to fit in. Right? I thought Eno would fit in lineups that he needed to fit in. But like, if you're like, how do you fade Eno? Well, what are you scared of? Like, what? Name it in football terms, because these fantasy points, psychologically, you don't understand what they. A lot of people don't understand what they relate to. They go, well, if Eno puts up, 25 points, like I'm dead. It's like, yeah, well, 25 is at 4,600. That's gonna be that maybe I had to have it type of thing. But now break down what 25 points is for Eno Benjamin. And then once you start breaking it down to like the yardage and the touchdowns and you go, yeah, that's a pretty big damn game for his role. And you go, like, people are acting as if like, oh, his median projection's good, right? His median projection's, 15. And you're like, well, what happens if I don't have those 15 points? It's like, you don't need his 15 points. Dude, if he only scored 15 points, you're a GPP player that doesn't have him, you're doing cartwheels, right? Yeah. It doesn't mean that Eno can't be in a winning lineup with 15 points. It's just that as a GPP player, I don't need him. When I don't play Nick Chubb in 75 lineups and he puts up 42, I close my laptop. The slate is over for me. It's like, that's the way it goes. When in the past, Derrick Henry put up 51 slate. I'm sitting there with no Derrick Henry. Like,
yeah, you're not going to win.
You're not going to win, right? Will Fuller had that week, 3 years ago? He got like 48 points at wide receiver as chalk also. You don't have him in your lineup. Just those are what you're fading. But even on a week like this, like, you didn't need any, like literally.
No, there was nobody you had to have.
Yeah. I don't think there was any. I mean, Deion Jackson would have been nice to have.
Yeah.
Probably would have helped you the most, but we take a look at the top 1% of lineups that finished in the millie. The top ones were Chase and Diggs. Like, yes, you needed at least one 30-point wide receiver.
Yeah.
You needed. So if you didn't have Chase or Diggs, you were in bad shape. But outside of that, look at all these other numbers.
Yeah. So here's a question.
These are all wide receivers. Let me go to everyone. Okay. Chase 63, Ramondre 58, Diggs 54, Burrow 42, Allen 40. Eno Benjamin with 9 points was still in 37% of the top 1% lineups. Only because he was just so owned.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? But if we take a look at these, I'm looking on the leaderboard now. Let me switch over. Because the winning lineup had none of those. The winning lineup's top owned player was Jamar Chase at 14%. That's it. Second place had Kenny Walker as the highest owned player in a Burrow stack and no one else. No Stevenson. The next lineup, highest owned player was Diggs and Walker and Allen. No Stevenson. Then the fourth place lineup had Stevenson and Benjamin. Okay, so the fourth place lineup with 210 had Burrow, Stevenson, Benjamin, Chase, Ayuk, Duvernay, Andrews, Deion Jackson, and the Jets defense at 2%, getting 20 points. So here's a Stevenson-Benjamin lineup. But if you take a look at the rest of the lineup, 2% Ayuk, 8% Deion Jackson, 4% Burrow, right? 2% Jets
Chase
defense.
Is in there?
What?
Chase in there?
Yeah, Chase is in there with Burrow.
Okay.
Yeah, Burrow, Chase.
Yeah.
Right. You needed Chase or Diggs. So it's like, here's a lineup that used Stevenson. Did he need Stevenson? No.
Yep.
Right? He would have been better off going down from Stevenson to Walker and then moving Eno Benjamin to some other, putting Deion Jackson in that spot and playing some $4,800 wide receiver, playing something there. He would have gotten more points. Like, you didn't even need, but because he was 46% owned, like, but you have to build your lineup this way. So it's like, Stevenson wasn't needed. Right?
So I have a question for you. Can I pose a question for you?
Sure.
So I'm looking at Eno Benjamin. I pulled up a number of sharp players just to see if I can make this point. So Eno Benjamin was 46% owned on this slate, and I'm looking at some of the sharpest players in the field. So I had myself pulled up. I'm at 58%, but then I see Roranosaurus Flex at 79% Benjamin, Brick 75, 83% Benjamin, Frankie Bourne slightly below the field at 39%, Lariota 58%, McLovin 33%, Nerdy Tenor 57%. So most of these players, and these are just a random
Right.
assortment
In
of
my
some
75
players.
lineups, Neil, I had 51% Benjamin.
Yeah. So my question is, would you be with a player like Benjamin, where it's going to take a lot to have him? Would you rather be on the side of all of the sharps, or would you rather be, competing with the people who are not necessarily using projections and or the weaker part of the field in a Millie Maker type contest where you have a lot of dead lineups? I would imagine if those sharps, if all of the sharps are on one player, and it's a player like Benjamin, where it's like, is he really? How confident are you that he's going to put up a have it score? I have taken the stand at times before where I go against what I think the sharps are going to do because I would rather compete against the
Yeah, but
other
that's
lineups in the field.
the sharps don't contain most of the field.
Yeah.
I want to be on the plus EV lineups. I'm not duplicating lineups with these people. I mean, there's too many combinations. So like, why wouldn't I want to be? I mean, that seems like a dumb question. Like I want to, right?
All right, that's fair.
If he
I
makes
guess
up more
if the
plus
sharps
EV
are only making
lineups
up
than I can't,
1%.
then why wouldn't I?
Yeah. I guess I'm overestimating the amount of sharps there are in the field, but that's a good point. They make up what 1-2% of the field, so
In the
doesn't
millie,
really matter
especially,
as much.
right? Yeah, like what
Yeah.
are we talking about now? Like, of course, I want to, like, dude, and at his price and his projection, Benjamin was closer to that 4K point guard in NBA than Stevenson and Walker and Henderson at his price. So it's like he fit into I had to mitigate it. If you're gonna eat the ownership on Stevenson or Benjamin, like I'd rather eat the ownership and also get $1,400 in salary to use.
Yeah, exactly.
In the same at the same process at the same time, because I can make that up on other receivers. I can make that. I mean, dude, we got other stuff. Same for Andrews. Like Andrews wasn't as owned as I thought he was going to be. So like dude, I had Andrews in like half my line. I think at 46% Andrews. It's like I'm just that I'll find I can build non-Andrews lineups, but I'm just choosing to build more Andrews lineups. The same thing with Benjamin. I'm only playing. Remember, my decision was to only play one of those 4 running backs in a lineup. Right? Sure. I'm not playing 2 of them. I could build those lineups. I'm just choosing not. I'm choosing other lineups that don't look like that because I want to put in Kamara and Fournette and Barkley and those guys, and not Diggs and Chase. Right? I may have a Diggs lineup in an Allen lineup. I may have a Chase lineup in a Burrow lineup. I may have Chase as a one-off in some lineups, but I'm trying to, can I find a running back that matches that score or has that ceiling? Because the people that have the cheap running backs, if Henderson puts up 18 and Walker puts up 18 and Eno puts up 14 and Stevenson puts up 20, like those would be useful if you're able to get like Justin Jefferson's 38 and Jamar Chase's 35 or something like that. But what happens if Diggs is sitting there with 19 points? What happens if Jefferson's sitting there with 15? What happens if Chase only has 22? And it's like, and Leonard Fournette has 32 and Barkley has 28. Like they're using their running back spots for the 19 pointers. And I'm using my running back spots for the 30 pointers and my wide receiver spots. I get the 9. Your Diggs 19, I have in Christian Kirk for like 3,000 less or something. Right. So I was building for those constructions. So like I was doing that with Andrews paying up 7K for a tight end, rather than if you're going to be playing a lot of Allen Diggs types lineups, you're probably going to have to punt the tight end. So it's like I'm not competing against those lineups. So it's like the only time I want to have those lineups is with correlated pieces.
Yep, that makes sense. I follow that. I had another point that I was going to make. I was going to make a point about double stacking. So this year I've been a lot more inclined to double stack, just after some conversations with Alex in particular, talking about how he's done some research and double stacking just tends to be the better approach for the largest field GPPs. I've always in the past instinctively, my instinct has been the larger the GPP, the less I want to double stack, because you need to be more close to perfection. So
Right. Well,
I'd rather not.
Neil, you're right, but it's a balance.
Yeah, it's a balance of getting closer to perfection, but also the correlation still matters enough that yeah, it's a tough balance. Obviously, this week I have regrets because all of my Bengals I was above the field on Burrow, but I always double stacked, and outside of Jamar Chase, nobody did anything. So I would
Yeah,
have
but you could
obviously
have
preferred.
Hurst could have been in a winning lineup.
Did he do much?
No,
Okay,
he got 5 points, but
yeah, he could have been.
outside of tight end, you didn't win at tight end this week.
That's true.
Like Andrews put up 26, but he's also 7K.
Right.
So I could go through these lineups in the millie. Like here you go. Tight end winner Tanyan. Second place Tanyan. Dawson Knox third place. Mark Andrews fourth place. Dawson Knox fifth. Travis Kelce sixth. He had 22 points.
So I
Zach
mean, you could
Ertz.
theoretically win with Hayden Hurst. I'm sure it was possible, but also these guys all have more than 10 fantasy points. Did more than 10 fantasy points better than Hayden Hurst at like the same salary.
True.
Some of
No,
them.
that's true. But still,
So that's a
Dawson
pretty
Knox
big
had
hole you're
12.
digging yourself.
Dawson Knox had 12. It's not. We're
Okay.
not talking about a hell of a lot. If you played the Jets defense, you would have definitely gotten a lot more above other people. But
Yeah.
but it wasn't one of those weeks where like, oh, Travis Kelce 35. Like you pretty much
Right.
need it.
Yeah.
Or some $2,500 chalk tight end puts up 18, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, no other tight end put up like more than 20. So like saving 4,000 in salary, that's what you needed to do so.
Yeah.
But I think you could have made a top 10 winning lineup even with Hayden Hurst, Jamar Chase, Burrow Chase, even with Kamara in that lineup. You probably you play Traquan Smith as the run back at a cheap price, and then that lineup it's quite possible to also have Diggs in it. So you have Diggs
Yeah.
and Chase and
Yeah.
Deion Jackson in the line. Obviously we're trying to put together like
Yeah.
the
This is all
nut lineup,
retrospect.
but it's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. It would have been possible for sure. Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I think those are the biggest talking points that I noticed just looking at this slate, looking at how much the sharps were playing of the top plays. I was also interested just looking at these pros that I was looking at. I was the only one who had a significant amount of Gabriel Davis at all. Broflex had 0, Brick had 0, Frankie had 0, Larry had 0, McLovin had 1 lineup with Gabe Davis, and Nerdy Tenor had 0. So just of this random assortment of pros, I was the only one who played any Gabe Davis. Just because I did play some of those game stacks. So at 6,500, I took my shots there. But I can see why people, after the big game last week, he doesn't have quite the volume of targets that some of the other players at his
He was the
price range did.
fourth most owned wide receiver.
Yeah.
He was
He wasn't. I don't
18%
think he was
owned.
projected to be. What was he projected?
No. Gabe Davis was projected to be like 7% owned.
Yeah. Yeah. I also had him at 8.5% projected ownership.
Right.
So at 8.5%, I thought he made sense.
Right. But 18, no.
Yeah. Less so. Yeah.
Right. But I wasn't playing much of that anyway. So it didn't to me, the ownership didn't matter. Right. Because
Yeah.
I didn't mind playing Gabe Davis as long as it was in 5-man game stacks of that game. So, okay, fine. If he fits in, he fits in. That's perfectly fine with me. But I ain't playing Gabe Davis one-offs. I ain't playing, he didn't project well enough to ever make those types of lineups. Right? Like DK Metcalf only came in at 12% owned at 6,800. Like,
yeah.
To me, that was better.
Yeah, it made sense to play DK Metcalf. I'm trying to find what we had projected for.
I had him at like 15.
Okay.
He came in at 12.6, so close enough. I had a ton of him. He was my highest owned wide receiver.
Yeah, no, I thought he looked good. I thought he was a good play this week. Obviously, did not work out at all. The play once again is just to avoid those afternoon games, right? I guess Diggs did end up going off, so you need something from, or at least help to have some
someone in the RG Discord. Like this is why I say that the edge still lives, because these are people that are paying for things, and getting help and listening to stuff for long periods of time, and still just will never get it. Someone in the RG Discord was The afternoon games haven't been shooting out. Should I be avoiding them in the
Fade. You
future?
got to fade them. Yeah. Well, it's
Right.
like NBA. Like you got to always have somebody from the late game because there's always somebody in the late game who's gonna go
Right.
off and catch you. Yeah.
Like the times of the games don't matter when it comes to player performance. If you're talking about as far as like late swap optionality and some
Right.
type of thing, that's a different story. But it's like no, okay, I'm gonna make sure to not never play a late player in NFL.
Yeah.
What does that have to do with anything? The time doesn't matter. The time doesn't matter unless you're
You
waiting
want
for
that early
unless it's the way.
screenshot.
And like I said, unless it's some type of like, oh, we're not sure if this guy's going to actually be active for the late game, which makes this guy a better play. Like I want to save my spots for that and take that risk. Like that's a different question than, oh, 4 o'clock games. Always
Can't
under.
play them.
Just bet. If you
Yeah.
think that, don't play DFS and just bet the unders.
Yeah.
Right? Take all the money you'd play in DFS and bet the unders, right? On those games. Just do
Yeah.
that.
That makes sense.
The
Yeah.
same people that have the takes, like, we'll have basketball season, right? Oh, no way. So and so is going to smash against this team. So why are you playing DFS? Just take all that money and bet his
Some of us
points
can't though,
over.
Blender. Some of us don't live in states where that's a possibility.
Prize picks an underdog,
Oh, sure. Sure.
right?
Good
On
point.
this is how ridiculous this is. To put things into perspective, uh, out of 6 weeks of playing NFL props on Prize Picks and Underdog, I've made a profit 6 out of 6 weeks. This week was my worst week, and I went 15-12
Nice. Wow.
for like $100. I got one more. I got Russell Wilson tonight, passing over 226.5 over passing yards, so maybe 16-12. But I went 15-12 and still made a couple $100. Right?
I actually didn't know that you could do prop bets on underdog.
Yeah, it's the same thing as price. It's the same. Yeah, but you have to pair
Okay.
them. You have to do 2, 3, 4s, or 5s. It's the same type of
Well,
thing.
they don't sponsor our show, so fuck them.
Okay. I don't care who sponsors anything. I want to go with the EVs.
Yeah. No, I play a lot of underdog. I'm a fan of underdog as well. But I didn't know because they don't sponsor stochastic shows, so I just
Right, but it's
never
the same
thought
type.
of it.
What Prize Picks does is the same thing as Underdog. And they
Yeah.
may have different numbers though, right? You may get different. That's why, like, depending on the number, like I'd Zeke over rushing yards last night, but it was over 51.5 on Underdog when it opened, and it was 53.5 on Prize Picks. So I'm gonna find all my pairs on Underdog and not on Prize Picks. And then Prize Picks had to go down to 51.5 also. And then I just
Nice.
hammered all my pairs on because all the what I've noticed on these sites, especially Prize Picks, is that the the casuals like slamming unders on Dusties.
What do you mean by dusty? Like old people?
Yeah,
What do you
yeah,
mean by
people that
dusty?
have a perception of being bad, like Zeke, right?
Okay.
Whatever his
Oh
rushing
yeah,
prop
yeah.
head that he opens with, it's gonna probably go down, no matter
Sure.
what. Like no matter what it is, my blitz projections even at 53.5 had it as a plus EV, and I'm like, I'm gonna wait a day or two, right? Because I know this thing ain't going up, right?
Yeah.
If anything, it's gonna go down, and then it went down 2 yards, and I'm like, okay, let me slam it, right?
Yeah.
Right, and it's like, okay, let the Dusties, like the Dusty people,
Yeah.
Randall Cobb or
Public
someone like.
perception is low on them. Yeah, yeah, okay.
Right. It's like it's not that it opens at a number that you have value at it, but it's like I know this is probably going to go this way. But
Even better.
the,
Yeah.
the sexy players are the ones where it typically just goes up. Right? So
Yeah.
you want to hit those as quickly as possible if you have value for those. But the dusty guys, like no one likes Najee Harris. It's like you wait a day or two for Najee Harris props.
Yeah.
They'll come down a couple of yards. Like they
I'm trying to think of the counter example. Is it like a Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase? The guys
Yeah,
that people
those
just
those
love?
go up. Yes.
Yeah.
Godwin, Evans, Pittman. Pittman sometimes because they open typically a little too low. Like Debo, those types of guys, like they typically go up. And same for the rushers, right?
Okay.
Right, like the
Like
sexy
Jalen Hurts or-
guy Barkley will go up. You know that
Oh,
type
running
of
backs.
stuff.
Okay.
Jacobs, on
Yeah.
the other hand, people fucking
No.
hate Jacobs, right?
Yeah. Miles Sanders probably going backwards.
Right.
Probably going down.
Right. So sometimes I don't mind waiting, especially when you have a daily limit. Like I have a daily limit on how much on a 24-hour period. So I always start with like the biggest discrepancies pair those with the biggest discrepancies for a little bit extra money, right? And then once I hit my limit, it's like, okay, I got to wait till tomorrow. But a lot of times I get the biggest ones out of the way, and then I see ones that are big, but I'm like, dusty player, this ain't. I can wait till tomorrow. This line will not move. I'm betting that it won't, so I'm gonna not prioritize making my pairs for it. And then there's some where it's like I got to slam this immediately because this line may actually move like literally in the next half an hour. Because when you see huge discrepancies like that, you just you got to jump on top of it. I mean, I had some like where's one? There was one that really moved.
And you're just looking at projections to kind of get an idea of where things should be. You're just looking at projections and then your own instincts for like what the public perception is of players, which direction they're going to move.
Well, only if they're going to move down. I don't care. There's no, even if I find value on a prop, if I found value on Zeke over 53.5, right? Because the Blitz had him at like, Blitz had him at 69 yards or something like that. So
you just never take overs.
No, I'll take the over there, but because it's a dusty player, I may be able to get a better number tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
Most of the time, you're not going to get a better number. Okay. Most of the time, but 90+% of the ones that I pick, I'm doing Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, right? Okay. And I'm getting them as early. And out of all of them, I out of like what the 27 that I had, 22 of them moved in my favor.
Nice,
right? So like that's why I get them early. I mean, then some people end up landing on the number or landing right over it. I mean, like you need to get them early because those 2 yards may matter.
The Makajeski line, you can't feed your family on closing line value.
You can't, but over time you can. Over time you can.
On closing line value?
Yeah, over time, of course.
I thought closing line value is too efficient that you're just not going to be able to.
No, you're trying to get closing line value. Do you understand what CLV is?
No. So I guess on closing line bets, maybe it's closing line bets. So my understanding is.
No. You don't want to bet at close. The closing line value.
That's my understanding of what he's
right. Okay. Closing line value means that let's say, the line on whatever again the football team A and football team B is 8.5. You bet minus 8.5 on the favorite, right? Yeah. That's the spread. And at close, they're 11-point favorites.
Okay.
Right? So you got 2.5 points of closing line value. Because anyone betting on Sunday, that team has to win by 11. But you just have to have them win by 8.5.
So I'm clearly misquoting Makajeski then. It must be a closing line.
No. But no, the common thing amongst bettors is that it's like, you lost the bet, but you got closing line value. But that's the same thing about in DFS of like, I made plus EV lineups, but it didn't hit. Yeah. I mean, it's the same type of thing. So like, if you build plus EV lineups over time, you will be profitable. The same way that if you can beat the closing line consistently in all of your bets or most of your bets over the large sample size, it's proven you're going to be a profit. You're going to be a profitable sports bettor. So you should be judging your play, if anything, by CLV. If you're going and taking props, let's say you go and took 10 props and 7 moved against you, right? Let's say you went, it's like, I'm going to take I'm going to take AJ Brown over 72.5. Yeah. And then by close, it's 68.5, right? It's like, dude, if you would have waited till close, you would have gotten 4 extra yards to have a leeway to. Yeah. The line moved against you. It's like, if you do it too often, like if you're losing money, but if it's moving with you, it's the same guy that last week said that like tailed all the stuff I posted on Friday. I said, here's all this, and I was only posting it to show the importance of that. And going, look, here are things that you shouldn't take now, because if you would have taken them Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, you're getting like 7 to 10 yards on all these props in your favor. And then one guy's like, I took them all at the current lines on Friday, and they all happen to go over enough or under enough, except for one, right? I had Brandon Cooks over 55.5. It went up to 60.5. He came in at 57 yards. I win, that guy doesn't win. And I'm like, and then I said, well, I won on Cooks and you didn't because
And
that
that's going to
one
happen a lot
bet
because
per
it's thin
week,
margins.
right,
Yeah.
on average is going to be the reason why I profit and you don't.
Yeah.
And then you know what the response is? Well, if they go over by enough, what does it matter?
Right.
Like, and
Yeah.
how do you
And that's
how do
why
you
there's
teach
always going to be edge in
how do you
DFS
teach someone
and
like
sports
that? You
betting.
can't.
Yeah.
Well, if it goes over by 20 yards, who cares what the number is?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like, well, it's always, yes. The lines are so inefficient, right? You're gonna get, oh, okay, Patrick Mahomes over 120 passing yards. At that point, like, if there's a Patrick Mahomes over 120 passing yards,
I don't
and
care
then,
if it's moving to 110. Yeah.
right, like, if, no, the other way, like, if you didn't get it at 120, and now it's at 125, I would still hammer it at 125 because
Right.
it's still 100 plus yards off. Like, it's still ridiculously off as it is. So
Yeah.
I can understand making that point, but they're never that far off that, like, imagine, like, if you took whatever, I don't know, if you took Patrick Mahomes over 265 passing yards and you took over and it went up to and you waited and it went up to 280 and you took over then and you had 15-yard difference you didn't get, and then he throws 320 yards and you're like, well, what do those 15 yards matter? Like, well, if you play this slate out over and over and over again, there are going to be times that it matters, right? And how many percentage of times will it matter? And that's what it will matter. It's not like, well, I know he's going to throw over 300 yards anyway. It's like, well, welcome to the astrology class then. I mean, like,
Right.
like, that's the same thing in DFS. I think the guy's going to do well. I don't care what his... what? Stephon Diggs? 13,000 at wide receiver? Well, he's going to put up 47 points. So what do I care what the price is?
Right.
That's essentially what you're saying. What is it?
If
So
you
what
can
does the
predict
salary
future,
matter?
then do it. Yeah, do whatever you want if you can predict the future. Don't worry
Right.
so much about salary.
It's not about the feels. Is that the name?
Not about the feels.
It's not about the feels.
Yeah, I like it.
Basketball. Are you playing the small 2-game slate tomorrow?
Is it? I didn't know there was one. Maybe.
I'm not.
Probably.
I'm going to wrestling tomorrow, so I'm going to be gone anyway.
Okay.
But then
Maybe just to like get my feet wet, get a feel for how NBA works again. It's been so long. Got to kind of get that brain working again in the NBA.
I think the Wednesday slate is like 13 games.
Yeah, that one. I'll be going to the Timberwolves game for that one, which it's kind of hard. It's harder to manage your lineups when you're at the game.
Right. Oh no, okay, it's not 13. I don't like I like what we're gonna get. Okay, hold on. Yeah, I hate these staggered stuffs.
I just want an 8-game slate every night.
Right. That's what I mean. It's like I like a nice 7 to 9 game slate.
Yeah.
Every night rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games. Thursday, 2 games. Friday is.
I thought they had gone more evenly spread last year. I thought it was.
I think it eventually gets
slates.
to that. I think in the beginning.
Okay. I guess with NFL going on, they probably are. They're not going to have as many competing with the Thursday night football game.
Right. But they still didn't mind Monday. Like Monday, it seems Monday, October 24th is an 8-game slate.
Yeah.
But Monday's not, because Monday's not on TNT. That's why. Right? Isn't Tuesdays and Thursdays are TNT games?
No idea. I don't have.
Right.
cable.
Well, who watches basketball anyway? Right.
I watch basketball. Yeah.
You watch basketball?
I watch Timberwolves. We have ways of streaming it, and I obviously I go to a number of games. My brother has the channel you need for the Timberwolves, so I go to his house to watch Timberwolves a lot. I actually don't have the channel myself to watch it. But,
you don't have League Pass? You don't have NBA League Pass?
I should probably. Is that on your computer? You can get it on your computer.
Yeah, and you can stream it anywhere and whatever.
Maybe I'll have to do that this year.
But I think you have blackout restrictions on that also, so maybe you're not even able to see Timberwolves games.
Right, and those are the games that I want to watch the most. So
right. I don't even know why I have League Pass. It's quite possible I barely ever watch the games at all.
I enjoy basketball. I think basketball is probably my second favorite sport to watch after football.
Oh, brutally boring. Dude, I will watch a Broncos primetime game. A Redskins or whatever, Commanders, Bears game.
Yeah.
Because the train wreck is more
It's
enjoyable.
fun.
And
I enjoy the train wreck. I don't know how people think NBA is boring. I get it. Like generally most games, yes, it's true that like a lot of it comes down to the fourth quarter and there's so much scoring that it's like each individual play like isn't that impactful. But just the athleticism, like I just feel like it's more fun to watch the dunks and the shots, and I'm more impressed more often in NBA.
dude, watch soccer. You'll see athletic crap all the time in soccer.
I'm sure I will.
Right.
Yeah. I've just never gotten into like I if I knew the players and played soccer DFS, I'm sure I could get into soccer.
Right.
I just haven't.
Well,
And
how
the
about
contests aren't
MMA?
cheap enough.
Look. I was never into MMA until COVID.
Yeah, I'm not someone who
Now,
typically loves watching violence, but with MMA, they've hooked me.
right. Right, MMA I could watch. Dude, it's like Bellator's on. I could watch that with nothing on the line, with like not like Cage Warriors, the Contender Series. I have
I
nothing.
still
It's
probably
just
wouldn't watch it with nothing on the line, to be honest.
no, but I
But
could do that.
with something on the line, yeah,
No, but I could no, but I could do that. I could do that for MMA. I could do that for soccer and MMA. Anything else is, dude. I don't even know how it's palatable even. Like I don't even know.
yeah.
It's like, dude, I'd rather watch the commercials at this point.
Well, we are definitely not on the same page there. I
Right.
love watching basketball.
Nothing matters. It just doesn't. There's no psychological nothing. Great. There's a 2-pointer. Great. I'm going to see like
Or a
100
3-pointer.
more of these.
But some of them look cooler than others. I don't know. They're so athletic. They make
They're
shots
only
that
worth
like I
two
couldn't even
points.
imagine making.
They're only worth 3 points. Dude, Damian Lillard from half court. Still only a 3-point shot. Who cares?
Yeah, but I don't know. I enjoy watching. I don't know. That's
Okay,
just
well that's you. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying
yeah.
this is the reason why I find basketball to be very boring.
Yeah, no, I understand the argument for basketball being boring. Also, my sister-in-law will say all she can hear is the squeaking of the shoes whenever my brother and I are watching. It's just all she hears is the squeaking. Drives her crazy. But I don't even hear that. I don't know. I guess I'm interested
Whenever I
enough
watch
to
a
do that.
basketball game, the only thing that I'm paying attention to is 1.5 points for him, 3 points for him, 3.5 points
Oh
there.
yeah,
Right? I'm
yep,
like, what players do I got in this game? It's like, oh, there's 1.25 point for the rebound. Does that count as a steal? I think that's a 2-point. Like that's all. Anything else, they might as well put bubbles. Anytime something happens, go +2.5, like the DK Live.
yeah,
If they had an
yeah.
overlay of that, I'd watch. I'd truthfully, Neil, if they did that, I'd watch. I'd watch way more basketball.
I mean, I wouldn't mind that. I would like that too. Yeah, no, it's a big factor for me in basketball too. I rarely watch it with nothing on the line. I probably would not watch a ton of basketball outside of the Timberwolves. I occasionally will go to a Timberwolves game and just not play DFS because I love watching the Timberwolves. Outside of the Timberwolves, I probably am not going to watch a ton of basketball without fantasy implications. So I guess I'm with you on that for the most part.
Okay. Okay. So Neil, you're going to be on 7 million shows this week on Stochastic.
Correct. I'm doing the new one is I'm joining the Sunday Night Football show this week. I think me and Eric Lindquist will be doing the Sunday Night Football show for Stochastic this week, and then other than that, I'm doing all of the other million shows I do every week.
Right. You went from like one show to every show.
One show to every. I am no longer doing a baseball show. I had been doing the Wednesday baseball show, and I thought I was going to be replacing it with basketball, at least for the time being. Though I'm not doing basketball content, which I'm okay with that. Doing enough NFL.
You could follow Neil at PlayerQDFS. You could follow me at BlenderHD. And as always, get the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. The advanced course is out right now. Right? 10 chapters, 6 hours, as well as all the Excel tools that I personally use, that James McCold has developed to be more accurate and more efficient with your process. Pick that up right now at theoryofdfs.com.